بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, our khatira tonight is about this, tafsir as usual. Last time we spoke was on Friday night. And on Friday night we spoke about Surah Al-An'am. Surah Al-An'am. And so I wanted to make a correction with Surah Al-An'am. Surah Al-An'am is a Mekki surah. It's one of the longer Mekki surahs actually, or the longest if I'm not mistaken. And it was revealed all one time. And that's not too common with the Quran. Oftentimes, different parts are revealed at different times. But Surah Al-An'am was revealed by many of the Mufassirin. It was revealed one time. And we mentioned that Surah Al-An'am speaks a lot about the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shared many ayat that night that speak about the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in creation. And then after Surah Al-An'am comes Surah Al-A'raf. And Surah Al-A'raf, parts of it were revealed in Mecca and other parts were revealed in Medina. And so in Surah Al-A'raf, I missed the entire surah. Now we're on Surah Al-Anfal. And so I will try to, inshallah, connect Surah Al-Anfal in some ways to Surah Al-A'raf, inshallah. And so Surah Al-A'raf is the 7th surah of the Quran by just kind of the order of the Mus'haf. And then the surah after A'raf is Surah Al-Anfal. And Surah Al-Anfal is the 8th surah. And tonight, in the second, 2 rak'at, we started Surah At-Tawbah. We started Surah At-Tawbah, and that's the 9th surah of the Quran, going in the order of the Mus'haf. Something just to think about is that Surah Al-Anfal and Tawbah are both Madani surahs. They're revealed in Medina. They speak about a lot of the events that happened during the time of Medina. And a lot of references in the ayat are being made to the Battle of Badr specifically. And Anfal, what Anfal means is the spoils of war, or referred to as, the booty of war. And so that's where the title of the surah comes from. And the reason that this surah received this title is that Badr was the first battle the Muslims had fought in ever. And so in the Battle of Badr, the Muslimin had a lot of questions and there was a lot of debate about how do we distribute the spoils of war. The Muslimin had gathered all these, camels and horses and armor and whatever other things they had brought with them in their caravans. And so the Muslims, after they had won the battle, there was a lot of questions about how do we deal with the spoils of war. Another mas'ala that came up during the Battle of Badr was how do we deal with the prisoners of war. And so that also comes up in Badr. And so just one point of the Battle of Badr that I would like, actually before I talk about a point, the Battle of Badr occurred in the month of Ramadan. It occurred in the 17th night of Ramadan. So we're only a few nights, I believe tonight is the 13th night, if I'm not mistaken, or the 12th night of Ramadan. And so we're a few nights away from the anniversary of the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr happened in the 2nd year of Hijrah. And right now we're in year 1444. So I want everybody to just have that number right. So it's been 1,443 years since the Battle of Badr happened. And then the anniversary of it will be 4 days from now or 5 days from now. And so the Battle of Badr was the first battle the Muslimin fought in. But it's a battle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about tremendously in the Quran. Because it was the first battle. And it was the first stance that the Muslims had taken to defend themselves in battle. During the time of Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the believers, قُلْ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَغْفِرُوا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ أَيَّامَ اللَّهِ. Tell those who believe to forgive those who don't believe in the days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in Mecca, the Muslimin were commanded to forgive and to tolerate the oppression of the mushrikeen. They were not allowed to retaliate. They couldn't attack, they couldn't defend, they couldn't respond to them in any kind of aggressive way. They responded with da'wah, with wisdom, with compassion, with good character, with argument, with jidal, but they never actually took a physical stance and defended themselves. And they endured many oppressions in Mecca, all types of oppressions: slander, boycott, murder, physical attacks. There was nothing that the mushrikeen of Mecca didn't do. Now the Muslims are in Medina. They have their own community. After 13 years of struggling in Mecca, the Muslimin have their own community. And even when they established their own community, the mushrikeen of Mecca would not allow the Muslimin to travel in peace and to live in peace. And they still they had this animosity towards them. And so they still wanted to stop them. And they were for many reasons. There were political reasons, because Mecca was the political center of Arabia. They were the religious center. And so they were afraid that the power of Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ would take over Arabia, and that they would lose their status and power. A lot of the members that migrated were from Mecca. So a lot of them were family members as well. So there were many reasons why they didn't want the Muslimin to succeed in Medina. And when the Muslims made hijrah, a lot of them made hijrah in secret. They didn't hide in the Prophet ﷺ. We know the story of his hijrah took a little over 2 weeks. And the Prophet ﷺ had to hide. He went to the Ghar Thawr. Instead of going north to Medina, he had to go south, and he had to go take a very long route just to escape the bounty hunters that was looking for him and Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And so when the Muslimin left Mecca, one of the things they gave up was they gave up a lot of their property, and they gave up a lot of their wealth. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises them for this. للفقراء المهاجرين الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأموالهم يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا. Right? The fuqara of the muhajirin who were exiled or kicked out of their homes and their wealth, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His acceptance. And so these Muslims, they give up everything. And now they're in Medina, they're starting over from scratch. The likes of Abdurrahman bin Auf and many other great Sahaba, they had nothing. And so the Muslims, what did they used to do? They would look for the caravans of Quraysh, and occasionally they would attack the caravan and try to take some of the merchant items of the Quraysh for their own benefit, to restore the wealth that was taken from them. And so during one of those raids, there was a caravan being led by Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan, who later becomes Muslim. And so the Muslims they head out to capture the caravan that's being led by Abu Sufyan. And Abu Sufyan receives word that the Muslims are out to get the caravan. So he sends a messenger to Mecca, and the people of Mecca, they send out a huge army, roughly 1,000 plus. And they had, musicians, they had poets performing. They came out of their houses, batara. They came out arrogant and proud. Like, today we're gonna destroy these Muslims once and for all. And the Muslimin, they came out unprepared for battle. So the Quraysh, on one hand, they're coming out with this large army, 1,000 plus. They have musicians, they have poets. They're showing off to the whole Arabia. Like, if you mess with Quraysh, this is what's going to happen to you. Right? And so it's a sign. They're demonstrating their force. And now the Muslims, they came out for a caravan, so a lot of them are not ready for even a battle. They're not thinking, you come out, you're thinking, okay, it's going to be a quick, raid. You're going to take some items from the caravan. You go back to Medina. It's done. It will be a quick one-day mission or short mission, and you're done. And so they come out, and the Quraysh send the caravan, or send their army. And Abu Sufyan, he was actually able to avoid the Muslims. He escapes them without the caravan being attacked. And then he sends a letter to the mushrikeen, or to the people of Mecca, and he tells them, I have escaped, our caravan is safe, we can return. The people of Mecca were still very arrogant and very proud. They're like, no, we're gonna set an example, and we're gonna make an example of these Muslims who have defied us for so many years. And so they insist on going out, and they come out to the field of Badr, which is an area you can go to today. You can visit if you go to the Haramain. A lot of Muslims today, when they go to Hajj or Umrah, they sadly don't visit the historical sites, and that's a great loss. Alhamdulillah, of course, the Haramain, that's the most important. You want to go for your Umrah, for your Hajj, and you want to visit the Masjid of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and pray in the Rawdah. That's of the most importance. But familiarizing yourself with the history of Islam, where Islam began, where all these events, you can relive the seerah, visually see where these events took place. Right? And so this is really important. It develops your identity as an ummah, to know where did we start, where is our beginning, what is our heritage, right? And so even our youth, taking them to these sites and sharing these stories with them is of the utmost importance. The Quran, the scholars, they say 1/4 of the Quran is qasas. Right? It's just stories. Why are stories so important? Because stories carry so many meanings. They carry belief, morals, ethics. They carry identity. They teach you how to act and deal with adversity. They motivate you. They inspire you. You hear the story of righteous people, you just want to become like them. They give you a sense of belonging, right? When you know the stories of your parents and your grandparents, you feel like, okay, now I have a sense of who I am and where I come from, right? But when you don't know anything about your heritage, you're kind of, you're kind of a branch from a tree, but they doesn't know the tree that they come from. They're just kind of on their own, lost. And so stories are very important because they give you a sense of who you are, and our Islamic stories and our Islamic history is of the utmost importance. We have to know. And so when we travel to the Haramain, I know we have some brothers, mashallah, who told me that they're going to Umrah on the 5th of this month, so on Wednesday. May Allah make their trip easy and blessed and accepted from them. And so take advantage. Go to these sites, right? Umrah takes you a few hours. It doesn't take too much time. You have all that other time, don't just spend it at the hotel or, doing whatever. But go out, see the sites and see the sites of Mecca. And if you go to Medina, there are the sites of Medina, and then the other places, Ta'if, and the other places in between. Take advantage of that. So going back to the story of Badr, the Muslimin, the Quraysh insist on seeing the Muslims in battle. So the Muslims right now have no choice but to fight. And so the Muslims prepare for battle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them victory. He sends down angels to assist them, and He grants them victory over the mushrikeen. Many of the leaders of the kuffar were killed in that battle. And the number of Muslims was roughly a little over 300. Some scholars, they mentioned 313, 312. And the mushrikeen were about 1,000. So it's about a ratio of 3-1. And even with that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted the Muslimin victory. What are some lessons we can learn? First of all, we have to have gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ جَاءَتْكُمْ جُنُودٌ فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهَا رِيحًا وَجُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. Allah says, remember my blessing. And then what does He say in Surah Al-Ahzab? He says, remember when an army came to attack you. Right? Allah is telling us, be grateful for this victory I have given you in the past. So as mu'mineen, the victory of the first community is our victory, because if it wasn't for them, and if it wasn't for their sacrifice, and if it wasn't for the victory Allah had given them, none of us would be here today. None of us would be worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No Muslim on the face of the earth would be praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if the Muslimin of Badr did not have victory. Every Muslim owes those first fighters and those first companions, and should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that victory. Because of their sacrifice, we are all able today to worship Allah and have the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and follow the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, follow the path of Huda, get out of the hellfire, enter Jannah. All of that is possible by the sacrifice of these first Muslimin. And that's why when we say the names of Sahaba, we say radiyallahu anhum. We say radiyallahu anhum because they were the true supporters, the true believers. Allah calls them in Surah Surah Al-Anfal, actually in the beginning of the surah, Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. They are indeed the true mu'mineen. You want to know who the true believers are? Look at Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. They're the true mu'minun. They are the people who we want to emulate and whose character we want to adopt and whose path we want to follow. The second thing we can take from this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create victory at the most unexpected times. This is the promise of Allah. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Whoever has taqwa of Allah, Allah will give him a way out. One. Second, He will provide for him from places he doesn't expect. And so this is true for on an individual level. If we have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are steadfast, and we are patient, and we have trust in Allah, and a good dhan of Allah, a good opinion of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that He will grant a way out, and He will grant ease in ways we do not expect. And most people aren't grateful for the unexpected good. Most people, they notice only the unexpected bad. Right? When something goes wrong in your life, you feel distressed. But all the other stuff that was good in your life that you never even thought about, Allah gave to you, you don't think about it. You're absent about it. Right? And so the issue is not that Allah doesn't give us blessings, it's that we're very biased. When it comes to the favors of Allah, we're very blind to the favors of Allah. Right? You're healthy every day, you have nothing, there's little shukr. The day you're sick, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. Every day you're doing well, you're not thinking about it. Every day you're strong and healthy, you're not establishing salah, subhanAllah. Those who don't establish their salah, they're not making tawbah. Even all of us, every single one of us. Are we returning back to Allah? Are we making tawbah? Are we making shukr? Are we giving the sadaqah? Are we giving our time? Everybody has to always realize that this is the nature of human beings. We're very biased. We see the worst in things and we neglect to appreciate the good. So coming back to the surah, to the event of Badr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises to give victory to this ummah if they are having taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they put reliance on Allah and they're steadfast and they're patient. That patience was very hard. In Mecca, if I'm not mistaken, it was Ubay bin Ka'b, or one of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, make dua for us. And the Prophet ﷺ said, do you not have any patience? The people before you were skinned alive. Now this companion, he's truly been tortured. The kuffar of Quraysh, they had burned his back with hot coals. So when they were torturing him, and he's asking him, Ya Rasulullah, we've endured so much pain, make dua. The Prophet ﷺ, he's teaching him a lesson in sabr. He's saying, the people before you were skinned alive for their iman. And you can't bear the pain that these people are putting you through now. And that pain is serious pain. You're being burned with hot coal. The Prophet ﷺ told them to be patient. The promise of Allah will come, and Allah will not break His promise. So 13 years later, the Muslims had their own city. 2 years later, they defeated the Quraysh. 8 years later, they conquered Mecca, and the whole Arabia was Muslim. The life of the Prophet ﷺ is a miracle. There's been no leader to defeat his enemy and conquer such a large, vast land with little violence, with absolutely no initial violence. The Prophet ﷺ's battles were a response. All of the battles of the Prophet ﷺ were a response. Yes, there were some battles that were initiated after the Khulafa, but during the Prophet ﷺ, his battles were a response to the mushrikeen. The Prophet ﷺ didn't conquer people. but he responded to the transgressions against him and the Muslimin. And within 10 years in Medina, the Prophet ﷺ conquered the whole Arabia. Do you know how many people died in the whole history of the Prophet ﷺ? No more than 300. There is no battle in history with such a large space of, a region of land and various tribes and nations fall under one rule with such few casualties. And the Prophet ﷺ himself only ever killed one man. And that was a man who threatened to kill the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I will kill you. The Prophet ﷺ said, no, I will kill you. And that the prophecy was fulfilled. That man, when the Prophet ﷺ said that to him, he said, I'm sure I will die. Because Muhammad said he will kill me. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? It was a miracle. He knew that the Prophet ﷺ, if he made a promise, it was going to happen. So وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُم. Like the people of Pharaoh, they had complete conviction in the Prophet ﷺ. They knew he was speaking the haqq, but they denied it out of arrogance. That's what Allah said about Pharaoh. They had complete conviction in the message of Musa alayhi salam, but they disbelieved in him out of arrogance and pride. They couldn't accept to follow another man. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he conquered these people with so few casualties, with compassion and mercy, and he gave them every chance for victory, or every chance to escape and live in peace, to coexist without any battle. He tried so many times, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then so the last point I want to take from this is that for us as a ummah today, the world of the Muslims sometimes can look very hard to bear. And we see a lot of hurt. And the Muslimin should have absolute conviction that the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true. And whatever calamity it befalls us, it is a purification and a test for this ummah. Because Allah will continue to test us until we are ready to receive the promise of Allah. Just like the believers, Allah will continue to test the believer until they return to Allah clean from all sins on the Day of Judgment. And this is the chosen ummah, the final ummah, the beloved ummah, the ummah of rahmah. Allah will honor this ummah, as long as they are steadfast and they are patient and they endure with reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we want to revive this conviction and yaqeen in the promise of Allah and know that the victory of Allah is true and that Allah can grant victory in the most unexpected ways, in the most unexpected circumstances, just like He granted the Muslimin victory in Badr and just like He granted Bani Israel victory against Pharaoh. He granted them victory through Musa alayhi salam, who grew up in the house of Pharaoh. Who was in the care of Pharaoh. He was fed with the wealth of Pharaoh, by the wife of Pharaoh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him the means by which Pharaoh would be defeated. And so just as that was possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah can grant victory to the mu'mineen. And so we want to have that conviction and revival of faith and trust in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no matter how hard, how difficult our own circumstances are in our lives or the circumstances of the ummah, if we have trust in Allah and reliance, Allah will give us victory. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us true iman. May Allah make us steadfast and make us among the mutawakkilin. May Allah ease the affairs of the Muslimin and unite us upon guidance and truth. And may He forgive us, our parents, our teachers, and all of the Muslimin, those who are alive and those who have passed. Allahumma ameen wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.